and also on the website and YouTube channel. So just for your information, it will be there, and it will be good to be able to share it with you afterwards. The morning's event is broken into themes, so around the rural working hubs, and there will be a speaker from Finland and from Ireland on each theme making a presentation, and there will be also an opportunity at the end of each of those sessions to have a few questions on what the speakers are after bringing to our attention. So as we already mentioned, just please include any questions you have in the chat box, and we'll monitor that throughout the presentations and bring it to the speakers at the end of each of their sessions. Just to give a background on why we're, I suppose, having this event, and just to thank everybody that has joined us today to have this conversation around rural working hubs. It is a very timely event, I think, to have at the moment. The conversation really has been moving towards remote working over the last number of years. And I think the COVID-19 crisis has really highlighted the potential for remote working to a much larger cohort that it might not have been available to prior to this. It can also help improve work-life balance and work towards achieving climate change targets. And I suppose one of the reasons we're involved in is it can help drive forward the regeneration of rural towns and villages. And there are issues that are facing stakeholders both in Ireland here and in Finland. And that's how we came to be part of this conversation with Finland. And I think it's also timely as the Irish government prepares to publish a new remote working policy by the end of 2020, which will include, among other issues, a strategy around the development of the network of digital hubs in Ireland. So just, I suppose, if we progress just through the slides, Heli, there, if you are happy to move on the slide. And Heli is going to welcome and finish in a minute. Just to, as I mentioned in the morning, the programme, we're broken down into to the role of remote working and rural regeneration, and I think that's something that many of us here are trying to achieve, and looking at different ways of doing it, and also then around the policy context, because it's very important that we do have that policy support for remote working and for rural hubs, and I think it's been strengthened in recent months and years. And also a very important insight from the community's point of view, so the people that are on the ground working in the development of these hubs, and what are their insights into the development of the hubs, some pitfalls they're finding, challenges, and also some tips that they can pass on to other groups that might be involved in developing and looking and thinking about setting up a hub at the end of this process. So just the next slide, Heli. Just in terms of the project itself, Longford County Council and Leader involved, and it's a leader-funded project, looking at the idea around rural working hubs and the strategy. So Longford, for those in Ireland, Longford County Council, centrally located, is a very rural county. So we would have the demand, a lot of our population would commute to Dublin and to larger urban centres. And it is actually recent research that has been carried out. Longford is the only county in Ireland at the moment not to have a rural working hub. So I think it's very important that we start this conversation and see how we can bring it on to the next stage. Leader Aspari covers 6 regions in Western Finland, and again, quite a rural area, so very much involved in trying to regenerate their areas and give support. Leader Heli and our team in Leader Aspari are supporting the local communities there. And just the next slide, Heli, in terms of the project, this project came about, oh sorry, before we go to that, we just have when the project came about, we have a quick question, and we will put the link onto the, Heli, if you put the link into the chat. Yeah. And we will just, out of an interest to see where everybody is coming from in this project, and I suppose it'll just give us a little bit of insight into the nature of the people that are interested and the rural areas that are involved in this project. So that should be in the chat there now. And if everybody just clicks on that, if they can, and just very quickly, it will just give us an insight into where people are coming from.
And I will here share the screen now that you can see how the answers are coming. No, that's not.
And this will just, it will help as well in terms of putting an insight into some of the information that we're gathering as part of the research projects involved in this project and support them. It's coming up in the chat there. The results are coming up in the chat.
Yeah. So we are from all over to Europe, mainly from Ireland and Finland, but also other European countries are present here.
Which is great, and I think it shows the interest. And this topic is something that can be really so broad-reaching. It's something that's of interest right across Europe and internationally. So it's very interesting at the moment, and there's a lot to be learned from the different regions, and that's what led us to be involved in this project, to try and see what are the ideas. And I suppose as with everything else in COVID, part of this project is a learning exercise, and we're working with Finland to try and look at what are good practices across Europe. And we felt this was an opportunity, as we couldn't have our events in person, to try and share the information and gather information and look at good practice from the different areas, and for us to learn in Ireland, to learn from what is being done in Finland and internationally, and the same from Finland. So you can see there's quite a broad response to that. So right across Ireland, but also in a number of different countries as well as Finland.
Yeah, this
So we can leave that running in the background, and we might just go back because we're conscious of trying to keep as much to the time as we can. And I suppose that's where we're coming from in terms of the project. Heli just introduced in Finnish, and to our Finnish colleagues that have joined us here today as well. And just again, before we move on, to thank everybody very much for joining us today, and particularly our speakers who have agreed to give their time to share with us their insights into regeneration and the use of rural working hubs in driving forward that regeneration.
No niin. Thank you, Lorraine. Eli tervetuloa täältä Suomen päästäkin Heli Talvitie Leader Aisa-parista. Tämä Rural Working Hubs on yhteishanke, kansainvälinen Leader-hanke Longford County Councilin kanssa Irlannissa, ja meillä molemmilla on yhteisenä tavoitteena on kehittää maaseudun etätyötiloja. Ja yksi sen tavoitteista, että me tutkaillaan sitä, että minkä näköisiä politiikkatavoitteita meillä on alueellisesti ja paikallisesti näiden etätyötilojen kehittämiseen, ja yritetään niistä oppia sekä myös sitten ihan näistä käytännön vinkkeistä, mitä näihin etätyötilojen perustamiseen liittyy. Ja tässä oikeastaan lyhyesti tästä hankkeesta mennään tuonne, katsotaan vielä, ketä meitä täällä on tullut lisää. Mutta näin. Sitten mennään taas, jaetaan näyttö. Täältä siirrytään takaisin tuohon meidän esitykseen. So, our project, Rural Working Hubs, we have a joint project with Longford County Council. This is a rather small Leader project, but we intend to do a lot of things during it, and we are planning to continue our project after our transnational cooperating project ends. So we have other local funding and development schemes that support the rural working hubs in our areas. And as all the COVID situation hindered our project a little bit, but as time have shown, the digital ways of doing collaboration have helped us to do a lot of our joint actions. So then we go forward with our program. So I would like to invite our next speaker online from Ireland. We have Tracy Gioke. She is a co-founder of Grow Remote Network in Ireland, and it's a social enterprise established to make remote work more visible, connecting remote workers, companies, and local communities. Grow Remote have been working with local communities throughout Ireland, supporting them to develop remote working opportunities, helping communities to address rural decline. So please, Tracy, the line is yours.
Hi, thank you very much. Oh, you're going to see my messy screen there. Can you see my screen? Super. Thanks very much for having us. I was looking down through the names of attendees, so I think lots of people might have heard this talk before. But can I just ask, just to start off, how long do I have here?
You have 15 minutes.
15, super. Okay, great. I'm just going to put on a timer just to make sure I get there. So my name is Tracy. I'm co-founder of a social enterprise grown out of Ireland called Grow Remote, and we make remote work local. In brief, we have over 77 chapters actually. It's grown up in the last couple of weeks. In local communities, we're all about offline, usually post around COVID. We engage with over 2 million online, 10,000 offline, supporting local community developers. We're funded by the Department of Business, now Trade actually, the Western Development Commission, Social Entrepreneurs Ireland, Rethink Ireland, and by a range of others. We've got a team of, it's actually 2 full-time people that have just started in the last 2 months, running over 200 events per year nationally and locally. And we have 2 training programs, one for people managers and one for those who are unemployed. And they hit off a number of people, and that's in partnership in Ireland with the IDA and Solace and Laois and Offaly ETB. So in summary, our mission is to enable to work, live and participate locally. We're mostly interested in live and participate. That's where all of us started as community developers. However, in order to get there, we need local employment, and remote work was our kind of way to do that. So we achieved this mission by making remote work both visible and accessible. When we talk about remote work, it's important to clarify at the start, we mean employment. So with all the same perks and benefits as I get in a company in Dublin City for pensions, maternity leave, paternity leave, everything. When we started off, we were mostly co-working space managers, as was I, and we wanted to know how to fill our spaces. So in some of the spaces in Ireland, I knew my dog would start barking at some point. Some of the spaces in Ireland were at about 25% occupancy rate. They needed to be at between at least 60, I suppose, just to break even. Co-working spaces, as we know, as you all would know, are really important to our communities, not only because they kind of bring that visibility of everything to the main street, and the main street has a huge impact on the health of our surrounding communities. So the example I have down there is the spool factory in Boyle that I was working with at the time, and the Boyle vacancy rates on the main street had actually increased in 2018, and they were coming in with a way to solve for that. But when I was in Boyle supporting setting up that space, we were going around telling people about the co-working space, and nobody knew what co-working was, and remote working was really hard to get. So as a co-working manager, I suppose I would have had a strategy that broke the co-working base out into 3 parts. The first was anchor tenants. So if I could get a large company, maybe a local employer, to take 10 seats, we'll say there's 30 seats, 10 seats, that would be amazing because it's guaranteed income, and it is kind of somebody there at the back of the building, anchoring down, I guess, the space. And my route to do that was really B2B sales, right? It's kind of Údarás and the Gaeltacht, I think, in Ireland are quite good at this in terms of going to people who are from the area and encouraging them to invest specifically in that area. And it's usually kind of employers that have some tie to that particular area. So it's very much B2B, it's business development. The next part of the building, I'd say the next 10 spaces, was startups, SMEs, freelancers. And for that, like as a co-working space manager, I was thinking, how do I access these people to tell them that these desks are here and let them know what we do? And in Ireland, we have networks like Leo's, Chambers, Enterprise Ireland, all of whom are generally really, really supportive. And if you say, hey, can we attend some of your events? Can we send out something to your mailing list? Absolutely no problem. The downside of maybe startups and SME startups anyway, for a space manager, is that they might not always pay rent on time, but they are a big part of why you would set up the space in the first place, and I guess more of a medium to long-term impact piece. Then when it came to remote workers, there was no community outside of the spaces. So we decided very simply, we said, okay, because we all came from the startup community and co-working spaces, the startup community knew each other. It's pretty well developed ecosystem in Ireland. We just build the same thing for remote workers. So, we might just go to the pub on a Friday night once a month and help people get to know one another. I think the story we used to use earlier on is for our first event. We had Expedia sponsor us and come speak at the event, and it was at that event that two people met who were working for Expedia, and they had been working within 10 kilometers of each other for the last 5 years, and they didn't know about each other. And we were like, oh my God, I cannot believe we need to facilitate this, all of that. At the time, there was an estimated 217,000 remote workers in Ireland. That probably isn't the case. But really, one of the interesting things was that they didn't know that these spaces existed, but when they did know about the space, and I'm thinking about a conversation to do with the Portershed in Galway, because that's just a particularly brilliant space, and it's in a city, so it's not very rural, but it's in a regional city. Spoke to a guy and kind of asked him would he come in as a remote worker to use the space, and he was saying no, that he has a home office set up, he has a whole routine around that. There was no reason for him to go into the space, and that was kind of alien to us. We thought, why wouldn't you want to work from here? But there were actually loads of reasons. What we did in Grow Remote, at the time, I guess everybody was asking us to bring remote work to their area, which is impossible with the nature of remote work. So we played an awful lot with the language around remote. So we came up with the term locationless employment, location agnostic employment. I know the Department of Community Development are using connected work. I think that's to get away from the sense of isolation to do with remote work. But our point was that these jobs can be anywhere until we make them local. So we couldn't bring remote work there, but we could educate our local communities. So through a platform called ChangeX, we made public our kit for building local communities, which has evolved in a huge amount over the last 2 years, as we were kind of figuring all of that out and seeing what support various different people needed to build and foster local communities. But we do know that when there's a thriving community of remote workers in their own right, so separate to the space, there's a conversion rate in the space. We will increase occupancy rates of between 20 to 80%. Because we're co-working space managers to start off with, which I think is the root of that is really community development. But as part of the 5 steps for setting up a co-working space, one of those, a local community of remote workers, one of those is partnering with a local space and local agencies. And that's really important for us. So what we do, and you can build a community. We make public everything that we do. So whether or not you're a Grow Remote, you can use it. So basically everybody kind of makes money off one part of the ecosystem in the remote working world. And we didn't really care about any of that. We just wanted jobs in our communities and we wanted to fill our spaces. So what we did is bring everything centrally together and open it up. So there's really basic stuff that we do sometimes that can get kind of glossed over. We'll advertise jobs and kind of make public information information that is could be behind a paywall. We put that into central depositories, and we make that. One thing that we do is support and educate local community leaders through training and ongoing support, and they in turn can educate and support their local communities. So if we look at co-working spaces and what we found, our communities would generally have one of three goals. So if you go out into the local community and you're talking about filling, is to get local people employed, because that's where you need to start. In some other areas, say if there's an older aging population with a small population, it might be to attract remote workers to the area. That might be the objective. And the third piece might be saying the likes of Castlebar, and I think I saw Bernard Joyce on this. Bernard Joyce was a pioneer in developing communities locally in Ireland around remote work, but their goal was to connect the hidden employed, as we call them. And as you go along that journey, there are lots of different things that you can do to be able to get local people employed, attract remote workers to the area, and connect remote workers locally. But that's kind of, I guess, more in the detail. So just to give you some of our key learnings, remote work is already here. We used to often hear, oh, somebody should really do something about remote work and get it here. It's here. It's kind of like the internet. You need to know where it is and be able to download it, I guess. It's just advertised in new places. And so we need to educate and build awareness in our local communities. The fundamental problem that we solve with remote work through that local model is that when Shopify are hiring across Ireland, even there's no mechanism to educate the local community. My dog's going to go crazy in a second. So we step in and do that free of charge, because there is no business model for it. It's not something that fits where the companies are at. Hubs, for us, we started off, when we built one hub, we went to the local train station at 6 o'clock in the morning and to attract the commuters, and we learned a lot there. Some people like commuting. Other people kind of said, if our employer let us work remotely, we will be doing it. But largely, I suppose, we learned that around that time, we said, okay, look, we'll go to the employers, we'll go to wherever you're traveling to, and we'll speak to your employer. But we were often asking for satellite offices, which wasn't really in line with the commercial kind of objectives of companies that we were working with. And I have a line at the end of this, but it came from a great event that Guinness Enterprise Centre ran, where an employer said, Ken Tobin actually had asked him, who runs co-working space in Tralee, had asked him, this is all well and good talking about community development, but when are you going to open up in Tralee? And the man said, I'm not going to limit my workforce to Tralee. I'm not going to limit it to Dublin. I'm not going to limit it. And that goes back to the problem that when remote work is anywhere, how do we make it here? I'll skip over companies because that's changed a lot. But then on communities and talent, we hear from employers that our communities are not remote ready. And so there's competency models that the likes of Workplaceless have developed. I think that remote ready for communities is a slightly different thing, and we're working on that with Pointer Remote in Australia, but also work that the likes of Boundless are doing around what makes that great. That's why we run training programs free of charge. So this is, I guess, a great example of why we didn't know. It's just technology and how the likes of Jobs platform worked. So when you search Roscommon on jobs.ie, you only find local employers. If you search it on Remote Circle, you find 317 jobs. This new kind of emerging sector is being advertised in other spaces. But most importantly, these companies get co-working spaces generally. I suppose the fully distributed companies do. So this is a website called Remote Hub. I'll link it afterwards, but you can search companies by co-working stipend. So when they employ somebody in the local area, they'll give them the €200 a month to work from a space. The problem is that these jobs aren't advertised locally. These companies aren't. So when careers days happen, when people are talking about who's employing locally, they're not speaking about these companies. And that's why we need to educate ourselves and in turn educate our local communities. So we believe, though, that the root of the problem is with policy, technology and culture. And in Bank of Ireland, I've had the opportunity to embed remote work in a large enterprise. And I suppose my question is, even when people can work remotely for the likes of Bank of Ireland, can they work from a co-working space? And there's a couple of things that would play off that. One is, will my employer pay for the space directly, like these fully distributed companies will? And how do we make that case to employers? And I know the Western Development Commission are on the call today, and they've been really to the forefront of that conversation, I guess, because there are funders and on our board, as of NASEC. But how do we make that happen? But the second thing is, even if the likes of a large enterprise pay a space for a co-working fee, if the culture isn't in the organization where it is okay for me not to be in the head office, then I'm probably going to have to go up to the headquarters in order to remain visible, get a promotion, feel connected, all of those things. So that's why at Grow Remote, one of the objectives that we are hitting for Enterprise Ireland is transitioning organizations from in-office to remote. And as a part of that, addressing the policy, technology and cultural challenges around that. And we built a maturity model along with the HSE to track kind of progress along that. In Ireland, one of the things that's been really great, as I just said, is the National Association of Enterprise Centres in the Atlantic Economic Corridor. Interestingly, when we're working with companies in a pilot, test and learn and co-working spaces, they have a lot of queries like around property concerns, data. What do you do if somebody walks behind one of your employees and sees, I don't know, whatever they see? So what we're doing is trying to define what are their requirements and put in place and kind of feed that in then to the network of hubs to let them take it and kind of, I know they're looking at standardizing hubs across Ireland. But also,
sorry, Tracy, just 1 minute left.
Super. One of the interesting things is that companies needed one procurement centre where they could go to co-working spaces, and co-working spaces could pay one space. That's what we're doing in around the world, around Ireland. Local awareness in terms of why it matters. You can see here that it's popping up in groups. That's because although these jobs aren't advertised locally, when one person gets hired, they tend to tell local people in their communities. These are maps of where Automatic and GitLab hire. There's loads of point of interest in terms of salary localization and also kind of employment incentives. So given I'm about to speed up, I'm going to leave you with this. This is Tulsa Remote. We've brought this in now to I'm going to exit this, to all of the local executives in Ireland, the local authorities, the chief executives and local authorities. We are bringing them into Tulsa Remote, into the local authorities to have a conversation around how that worked for them, how they attracted employees of large organizations instead of employers, because that might be one of the new models that we have to look at. Thank you. I hope I just hit the timing mark, and thanks for putting this event together, and thanks for having us.
Thanks, Tracy. You're muted, Helly.
Thank you, Tracy. There was a lot of information in 15 minutes. Thank you of that. So now we hop to Finland, and we have Mikko Markkanen from Crazy Town Working Hubs on the line. And Mikko Markkanen is one of the founders of Crazy Town Co-working Hub. And it has several locations in Finland, one in Jyväskylä, where Mikko is now calling, and one is in Hämeenlinna, where they have an interesting combination of a working hub and business incubator. So you're welcome, Mikko.
Thank you, Heli. It's really nice to join this conversation and this webinar, and thank you also, Tracy, about the last presentation. It gave me a lot of good insights and also raised a few questions. But anyway, to my 15 minutes, I'll also try to be on time. Let's see how I do, because I often get too distracted on different stories. So I've been an entrepreneur for my whole life, basically, and these are just my basic interests aside of the work I do. So I've been working with regional development for basically 20 years also. So on side of the co-working business. About Crazy Town, we are privately owned, and these are our main activities. Turnover of about 2 million and a team of 15 people. So that's what we do in numbers. But we started back in 2003, and there wasn't even a term co-working back then, or at least we didn't know about it. It was fairly new back then. And we started it because we wanted to, we were really young entrepreneurs at the time, and we wanted to learn together, maybe, save some money by sharing the office space and stuff like that. It was pretty simple. But nowadays, I would say that, or during the years, we've come to the belief that I think the future of work is about people from different communities and connected communities really collaborating together. And I think what the Tracy also talked earlier is resonating with this belief. So let's dive into the community side. That how do we build communities? Like I said, our first belief, or why we founded Crazy Town, was that we wanted to work together and learn together. And I think this is something that we've kept during the years. So we operate 4 communities at the moment with about 650 individuals from 200 different organizations. Well, they are not. I can't say that they are in any, in the countryside or rural areas, but maybe in small towns. But in the past few years, there's been a growing demand from really small places back there in the woods that have started to think about this, starting their own co-working sites or remote working hubs or whatever term is being used. And we've had the pleasure to consult them and talk with them and try to connect them. But like I said, we have a big emphasis on building a tight community within our sites. And we started basically in the beginning. We started with freelancers and solopreneurs, micro-sized companies, micro-sized businesses. Those were the main user groups in our members. But during the years, I think what has grown a lot is teams from maybe larger organizations or remote workers, especially during the past year. Of course, this has really grown a lot. So there's a lot of people. They are balancing between, should I stay working from home, or should I take a spot from a co-working site and have a sense of community and all that things. And it nowadays, even like bigger and bigger teams are starting to discuss that, okay, instead of us who are working in different town or different place than the head office, what if we don't take the train every day, and what if we set up a satellite office or like a small office here in where we live. And I think this is of course on the background of the growing demand. But one thing is important that we've learned, that it's always about the individuals. When you are building a community, it's always about the individuals and not the organizations where the people come from. That is really important. And of course, if you are building a community, it's built on culture. And again, culture is built on rituals and artifacts. And there's 2 of our main rituals and artifacts there in the picture. Since 2003, we have every Friday we've had this from 9 to 10. We have a community learning session, and so we've been running it for 17 years now. And that's the kind of the Crazy Town morning coffee institution. It's a fairly simple peer-to-peer learning session, facilitated, yes, but it's always quite open and quite informal. And then another picture there is the kind of we have this big bottle of cheap. Sorry.
Sorry, somebody has a mic on. Please allow Mikko to have a presentation.
Yeah. So we have this kind of a ritual that we have a big bottle of cheap vodka and cognac there in the corner of the office. And the rule is that no one is allowed to drink it alone, but everyone, all the members have a right to call for not celebration, but like let's take a toast together. But there needs to be like thing behind it, that if you do it, you have some good news to share to the community. So it's basically a way of learning together and learning from other people's successes and success stories. Step two on building a community, you need a community manager. Of course, this doesn't work in a really small community. There's just no way of making it work in it money-wise. But we have 1 or 2 community managers in every site, and basically what they are facilitators of the learning. They combine people, they combine ideas, and they sort of network producers, so to say. So we have a big history on making like joint ventures and joint offers between our members. So the community manager is helping that one. Well, step 3 is making learning possible. We have loads of different mechanisms on how to make our members learn from each other. Like I mentioned, the Friday morning coffees, they are one of the main tools, but we have also we have about 200 events a year, and even like deeper learning programs for our members. We have at the moment 6 different programs with about 150 people participating them, and they are usually done so that it's like a 24-hour, 48-hour session somewhere in the countryside. But they are focused on maybe leadership skills or some other specific skill sets. And then, of course, the digital community. So this helps people from different sites or different communities to link together and find each other and find the competencies and interests of other members. And we believe that this leads to making business together. So if you know people, you trust them, then you start learning from them, then you start doing business together. And 85% of our members are doing some sort of business together. It can be joint projects or just buying services, but usually they start small and well, they can lead into new companies and totally new businesses. But I think the figure 85% is pretty high, so that's what we are proud of. And then the Hämeenlinna case. So this is the smallest of our sites. I have to check the time. Yeah, a few minutes. So this is the smallest town, and when we started it was we were thinking that, and the city of Hämeenlinna was in trouble. It's struggling between 2 bigger cities, between Helsinki and Tampere in Finland, and they were losing people and they were losing jobs, and a lot of people were remote working from Hämeenlinna to either one of these bigger ones, and we were also thinking that can we continue in Hämeenlinna? Does it work there, the co-working site? And I have to say, and based on this Hämeenlinna case and also others, that what we believe is that the smaller the town, the broader the target group and bigger the mission. So because when you go into a smaller place, even in a small village, the kind of the meaning of the co-working site or the remote working hub becomes bigger, and you need to, well, like Tracy said, there's at least one of those 3 missions that you have to have. Either you create jobs or you make the knowledge workers visible to the whole community. But yeah, in Hämeenlinna, we started this public-private partnership with the city of Hämeenlinna and one local bank and also local regional development agency and us. And we decided also that no project funding needed. We just everybody brought their own existing activities to the same premises and the same model. And we get it running in less than 7 months from the first idea. And basically the idea was that to offer all the services for new companies or growing companies from the same place. They used to be all around the city of Hämeenlinna, and now they were from the same place and under same roof. And well, this is the first year of operation, and the results have been quite good. So there are now 100 individuals from about 70 different organizations, and we've organized already more than 100 events, of course, some of them online, with 3,000 participants. So this is, getting a lot of the surrounding community connected to the place. And especially what's nice is that we've already had over 50 funded business ideas. So we run the selection together with these public organizations, and all these ideas get 2,500 euro demo money, so they can test something and try something new. And 80 new business ideas originated from this community. So this is, for 1 year results, it's pretty good already. And then there's the software impact. So like I said, it's really starting to show on the whole city that what we are doing there. So it has become the showroom for talent and businesses, and it's connecting the local community. Even organizations who are not part of the Parkki, they are now being connected, and kind of this way attracting more talents and more investments to the area. Yeah, thank you.
Kiitos Mikko, thank you. So now we had 2 examples of creating a co-working network and developing services. So if you have questions, please write them on the chat box. So for Mikko and Tracy. And just to let you know that after this webinar, the presentations will be sent to you by email for those ones who are registered. And yeah.
Yeah, the name was kind of an accident. So although we were, all of us who were founders, we were our main issue, like, how do you say, pääaine? Our
major.
Yeah, we were majors on marketing, but still came up with that kind of name. So and it was, yeah, total mistake.
I really like the name, and I think it shows as well. For me, I can think of the synergies that happen in a space when you have big companies, local employers, all of that coming together. It is a little bit crazy. So I love the name. Yeah.
The one thing that I'm jealous about Grow Remote and Ireland is that of your goal that you will make this remote working visible, that also in recruiting processes that you can do it also on remotely. Firms in Finland, they do that, but it's not the biggest interest in their recruiting.
Yeah, so it's interesting. When we started off, I remember actually somebody who I'm just going to, I thought I'd get him there so he wouldn't bark. Somebody who, we would speak to companies and they would say, oh, we're hiring remotely, but like everybody's kind of coming from the cities. But that's because when they were hiring, job platforms like LinkedIn only allow you to hire in cities anyway. They wouldn't allow you to hire anywhere in Ireland, even when Grow Remote was hiring, which was so frustrating. But they just never thought, they went remote so organically. They never thought to advertise it that way. So the best example that I have in Ireland is Web Summit and Lisbon, I guess, where they were advertising jobs in Dublin and Portugal. And we contacted them. They fund us as well through ChangeX. And now they advertise jobs remotely. And that is just huge, and it is about going to companies and making the case, make them visible. Otherwise, we'll go back to how we used to do it, which is twofold. One, applying for a job and being like in the cover note, by the way, I need to have this remotely. Or second, going into a company, staying in a city for 15 years, finally earning the trust, and then getting the chance to go remote, which is actually more detrimental to our communities, because people are coming to our communities with higher salaries that we can't get access to, and they're pushing up the prices of our local communities. So we need it to be visible and accessible.
Okay.
I have to
comment.
add something to that. I think what we've been seeing in the past 6 months is really a growing number of posted, open jobs with no location at all. I mean, or they can be that you can be in Jyväskylä, Helsinki, or anywhere. Doesn't really matter. And then that's really unique. I haven't seen that one before. You always put like, where do you want the new employee to be from? And now it's like, we don't care. And that's cool.
Yeah.
And one of the cases in Ireland, there's a company called Nearform. They built a COVID app. That's why people would know them. But they recently had a non-tech job, and non-tech remote roles are in huge demand. And that was across all of Europe. They were hiring across Europe. So what we did, Transylvania, one of my great friends from Transylvania. So what we did is we kind of promoted that through our community of community developers and all the kind of local Facebook groups, anything that was local. Now, Nearform would never pay us to do that because they don't need they've got no problem accessing talent. But that job landed in Ireland instead of Europe. Now, I know this isn't with our partners on the call, that isn't ideal, but you can do that too, right? Where is your competitive edge when work is anywhere and it's advertised as such? There's definitely ways to do it though.
Yeah, and that's also, I forgot to say that's why we emphasize really on the learning, because if you think of most of the remote workers, they are highly skilled experts, and the only value they have in the labor market is their own skills. So that's why whoever learns faster or better, wins in the end. So that's why the emphasis on learning services.
And just to pick up a couple of questions in the chat there, Tracy, the question came in about how do you overcome corporate clients' concerns about security and data connectivity and stuff.
Yeah.
Is that coming up as an issue that you're seeing with your work with hubs?
Yeah. So it is. So I guess I'm given the opportunity to do this inside in a bank, right? And we're heavily regulated. We can't just do whatever we want. So basically what we had to do is bring stakeholders around the table, have everybody there and kind of put together our criteria, and we had to define that. But as Grow Remote centrally, we are working on a targeted approach to transitioning companies based off the 30% model, 30% club model in Ireland, which is for gender diversity. But we can do the same thing, but for remote work. So it's a very targeted approach. And for us, we decided to focus in on large enterprises who might have maybe, we could work with 5 companies and unlock 80,000 jobs as opposed to working with lots of SMEs. But we can make the kit public for SMEs, but if we go for that top tier first, we can get us to the next tipping point, kind of like where COVID brought us to. Is that 30% legislative? I don't think it's a legislative commitment, but a lot of CEOs signed up for it. So what they said is, they went to this group, it's all over the world, went to CEOs and said, we need you to commit to the business case for gender equality, but we don't know how to get there. So we want you to just take a leadership position, say, this is where we need to get to. Now we're going to meet on a regular basis to solve for challenges along that journey. And if we can do the same thing but for remote work, we're going to ask CEOs to commit to a future where employment is accessible anywhere. And then we don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to meet on a regular basis to sort out problems like security, IT, etc. And I think that companies get great comfort from hearing how other companies solve for security, IT, etc. And that peer support is really critical.
Thanks very much, Tracy. And I know there's a couple more questions, but we might just move on just aware of the time. And just remind anybody that's not speaking, maybe just to keep your mics on mute, because there is some feedback coming for some of our participants there. So thanks very much to Tracy and Mika. It's very interesting to hear that conversation, and the two conversations similar in nature happening in both countries and going on quite a long time, particularly in Finland there, you're a long time at it. Just to move on now to our next team around the role of hubs and regeneration. And I'd like to welcome Stephen Carroll and Deirdre Frost to the webinar from the Western Development Commission. And they're both involved in the Atlantic Economic Corridor Enterprise Hubs project. And that aims to create an interconnected community network from over 100 hubs identified as either operational or in development in the AEC region. And they have carried out a lot of research over the last number of years. And I think that's going to be very important in terms of informing the kind of the future development of the hub network. So I'll pass you over to Stephen and to Deirdre.
Thanks very much, Lorraine. So as Lorraine said, my name is Stephen Carling. I work on the Western Development Commission, and it's a government agency, and it can be categorized, described as focused on social and economic development in the Western region, and it's been in existence since the 1990s. And we work across 3 areas: regional leadership, and that includes policy analysis, the AEC, which I'll describe in a few minutes, and EU projects. Then there's also regional promotion, and we have a More to Life campaign that's live at the moment on Twitter. So anyone that's on the call there, if you want to give us a follow on social media and have a look at what that's about. And then Sustainable Enterprise, which is the Western Investment Fund, described as WIF. And that's the Western Investment Fund to be well known around the region. We invest in businesses, communities, and also in the audiovisual and the creative sector. So some stats there on how successful that's been over the years: over 134 enterprises supported and 5,000 jobs supported. So a big impact across the region. Now, what is the AEC? The AEC is a part of Project Ireland 2040, so it's a part of government policy, and it's an emerging collaboration network across the region. So it includes that region that you see on the left-hand side, so the Ireland's Western Seaboard. There's 9 counties in it, with and 10 local authorities collaborating together on various projects, Donegal down to Kerry. It's about creating investment, creating jobs, prosperity in the region. So very much aligned with the WDC. So where did this hubs project come from? The Rural Regeneration Development Fund is a 350 million fund that was launched in 2018. Initial funding was 350 million, and under that there was a collaboration project between the WDC and 4 local authorities in the region to establish a 4-hub network. So this is back in 2018, and that funding was provided, and the project was then initiated. And it included 4 hubs, one in Roscommon, one in Donegal, Mayo, and Sligo. And both myself and Deirdre was involved in that. Deirdre led it, Deirdre Frost, she'll be talking to you in a few minutes, and I was involved in the Mayo aspect of that. So that's how I got involved in hubs, and that's how the hubs, AEC hubs network began. So this application went in, and the people at government level looked around and said maybe we should extend this out and look at incorporating all the hubs in the region. And they start to ask the question then, well, how many hubs are there out there, and what do they do, and what don't they do, and what are they about really? Because there was a loose enough understanding, I think, about what hubs did, and there was a lot of funding coming into government. I suppose they were having difficulty understanding what they were funding. So this is what this project is really about: is to find out what the hubs were in the region, and try and create a network around. And there was an understanding at government level that there was about maybe 40 in the region. So we started this project. My colleague Pauline Leonard and I started this project back in 2019, and going from an understanding of 40 or 50 hubs, we are now have 114 in our region on the books. So the project is €1 million from government to fund it, and it's coordinated by the WC and the AEC officer network. So there's AEC officers based in all the local authorities up and down the region who are crucial to helping us deliver projects in the region. The project aims, first of all, develop a hub classification system, and that is really the culmination of a lot of work in terms of mapping. First of all, doing data gathering on the hubs, and then mapping them out, and then discovering what facilities they offer out of them, because that understanding just wasn't there. So you're starting really with a blank canvas. Then they provide a suite of IT systems, and including a booking engine, so that we could have one. I'll touch on that in a second. I have a slide on that, and then establish a hub community network. So some of the previous speakers have already spoken about the importance of the community, and so from the IT systems we want to provide that tool to help create that network. And then there'll be other initiatives like a hub outreach scheme to raise standards in the hubs, and where we are at the moment now, where's marketing and promotion of them. Classification, as I said, there was a loose understanding of what hubs did and what they didn't do, and there was a whole plethora of different names and titles for hubs. So those creative hubs, innovation hubs, whatever you're having yourself hubs. So what we did was we initiated a consultation session with stakeholders all across the region and outside it, and outside the country to help us come up with a classification system that would be a guideline, not a rule book, but a guideline and a starting point for an understanding of what hubs did and what they didn't do. And we came up with 5 categories, and this is all based on another number of busy slides that include all the facilities that hubs offer. So it is based on facilities that they offer, not on titles. So it was from the ground up. So that's the 5 hubs that we've come up with: enterprise, scaling, R&D, which largely third level, attached to third levels, co-working hubs, and community and enterprise hubs, which is probably the biggest cohort. And who is going to be who is the customers that these hubs are looking to attract? So some of these will be very familiar to some of the speakers on the call already. 2 cohorts I think that I want to draw attention to at this stage is the flexible corporate. So this is Tracy has talked about the challenges around that, about getting big employers to look at these hubs as a viable option for locating their employers. So, you know, if there's one upside of COVID-19 is that conversation has very much advanced now. So that's another cohort we're keeping an eye on. And only last week, our Minister for Rural and Community Development, Heather Humphreys, has talked about her ambition to have public servants based in hubs as well. So public service hubs are big in England and the UK. They have them on the outskirts of big cities to prevent or to remove the need for public servants to travel into the middle of the towns and cities and clog them up. So but they're exclusively public service hubs. So what we're doing here is we're talking about locating public service with private individuals. So you have that mix of public and private. So that's our customers. Now the IT systems, this is a key deliverable and something that's we've been very busy with in the last 3 or 4 months. And we're now in a position where we're 3 or 4 weeks away from signing a contract with a company to provide a web platform, which will be a single portal where you land on and you'll be able to find hubs based on the map or based on doing a search box up and down the region. So, and their facilities will be listed there. So it'll be similar to an Airbnb type system. A booking engine, a fully fledged booking engine from end to end. So it'll be buy a product from a hub all the way through to payment gateway integration. Hub management system. So this is about capturing information. So it's like CRM, capturing information and leads for the hub managers on their hub and reporting on that. And then the real magic sauce, building the hub community. This is like a private social network for hubs, for hub managers to engage and connect with each other. But the sharing of best practice across the network is a key part of this project. Some hubs are struggling, some hubs are flying, and a lot of the problems can be solved by just getting those people connected and networked. And through these IT systems, I suppose what we'll be doing here will be automating the venues, and that will allow for the hub managers to take their heads out of the onerous day-to-day tasks and focus on the community building. And that's what they want to be doing. So that's, and AEC Hubs, the AEC Hubs network has always been a pilot, and if the pilot is successful, it should be rolled out nationally. So procurement, this is about how we purchase these systems. We use a competitive dialogue process, and we have established a framework. And what's I suppose important about that is that the first contract would be for the AEC hubs, and that'll be signed just after Christmas. But the framework means that multiple contracts can be taken from that, and that means that other hubs outside the region will hopefully be funded, and they will buy contracts from this framework, and then we'll end up with one system for the whole country, rather than one system in the AEC and one system in the southeast, and then an integration project that we have to manage in 2 or 3 years' time, where we want to get them all talking together. BCPs, which are broadband connection points, they're community centres for the most part. They're part of our national broadband plan. They will also be able to come onto that, and also open libraries that provide working spaces. How am I doing on time here? 9 minutes. National Hub Network. So I'll move on to that. So where are we now? Marketing the hubs is where we're at the moment. We have a strategy that we're going to be launching in January for how we're going to roll out this network. But we've been active across all pillars of the strategy in the last 12 months. Government policy. As I said, government understanding at the outset of this was like that hubs were maybe this niche piece of the economy out there. And now Heather Humphreys has decided, based on the AEC pilot, that the national hub network needs to be looked at, and the data gathering for that has already begun. So letters of issue to stakeholders only last week, and there's 4 government departments have formed an interdepartmental group on the hub network. So that's a key one, because that's 4 sections at the highest levels working on this project to see it come to fruition. So that's Hub's IDG. Minister Varadkar is to publish the government remote working strategy pre-Christmas. Deirdre will touch on that. And hubs are now going to be part of the National Development Plan review in 2021. That's key, because that means if they're part of the review, it means they can be part of the play that goes for any of the funding that's under those plans, and that's big, huge money for the hubs. Economic. So I'll hand you over now to Deirdre Fost. Lorraine, that's okay, Deirdre.
Thanks very much, Stephen. Yeah, Deirdre Fost.
I'm just allowing you there now.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks very much, Stephen, and thanks, Lorraine, for organising and inviting us to participate. I suppose I'll talk about the remote working side of the hub's jigsaw. And the WDC has had a long experience of looking at what was originally called teleworking or e-working since we were formed, really, back in the early 2000s or even earlier. We're all now familiar with working from home or remote working under COVID, but we have looked at this in the context of both how we operate as an organisation, as well as researching the practice, largely in Ireland, with a rural regional perspective. So, like I say, we have had an e-work or telework policy from the early 2000s when we started. We're a rural headquartered organisation in Balladreen, County Roscommon, but most of our personnel are from living maybe within a radius of 50 plus miles of there. So teleworking was a feature of employment practice for the organisation from the start. Separately, as a policy analyst, I've been looking at e-working, teleworking in the context of rural and regional development. And there is 3 links to 2 recent blog posts, which were written in the context of COVID and what will be the new working from home, what will be the new normal in the context of remote working and regional patterns. And then the last link there was a piece I wrote in 2017 on the evidence for remote working back in Ireland in 2017 or even earlier. So bringing it up to the present, late last year, again pre-COVID, with the growing interest in remote working in Ireland, we decided to partner with NUIG Whitaker to look at remote working generally. The objective of the partnership was to examine issues, challenges and opportunities in extending the practice of remote working, to highlight best practice and to make proposals to inform public policy. And again, this is all pre-COVID. COVID happened just as we started our partnership. So we decided to undertake a survey, a national survey of employees back in April to see what the experience of remote working, albeit enforced remote working under government guidance, what we could learn from that experience to inform our work generally. So the next few slides, I'm going to go through our findings from the survey. I should note before I go there that actually we then did 2 surveys. So we did a survey in April, and then we did another survey, which we call phase 2 in October. And they were to measure the different experiences of employees in Ireland, and it's a national survey. So phase 1 was conducted in April. The term I call is emergency COVID, when we were working from home and the schools were closed and childcare was closed. And then the second survey was in October, when the schools and childcare, etc., had reopened, and notably before we came to level 5. So just trying to control the slides. Did you do that, Stephen? Thanks. Okay. Phase 1 on the left is the results and phase 2 is the right. In phase 1, we had over 7,200 responses, and notably, the responses broke down as 87% were working remotely, 11% were on-site and remote, and 2% were either fully on-site working or not working, arising from the pandemic. In October, the response rate was a little less, but still very high. The largest response of any national survey that's been undertaken under the COVID period, over 5,500 respondents. Back in October, 68% were working remotely. There was more working on site and remote. Again, level 5 restrictions weren't enforced at this point. So a quarter were mixing on-site and remote, and 8% were fully on-site or not working. Stephen, I'll rely on you, I think, thanks. So in phase 1 on the left, when asked, would you like to continue working remotely or not post-pandemic, post-crisis, 83% said they would like to continue working remotely. And then phase 2, 94%, it had actually increased the numbers, the proportion that wanted to continue to work remotely, some or all of the time post-crisis. In phase 1, sorry, I haven't got there yet, Stephen. In phase 1, at the lower part of the slide, 12% would like to continue working remotely on a daily basis. So if you're working a 5-day week, that would be 5 days a week. 42%, the highest group, would like to continue remotely several times a week. 29% several times a month, and 16% said they did not want to continue working remotely. 6 months
Sorry, Deirdre, just 1 minute left.
Oh, crikey, okay. 6 months on, the proportions had changed. 27% would like to continue working remotely on a daily basis, 54% several times a week, 13% several times a month, and 6% did not want to continue working remotely. Basically, the overall message is that as the experience of the pandemic went on, more people wanted to continue working remotely. Next slide, I'll have to fly through these, but they can be shared. You can skip that, Stephen, please, sorry. Advantages, we're all aware of them. It's about flexibility and no traffic. The disadvantages are loneliness, isolation, staying motivated, and problems with your physical workspace. Most people believe that their productivity increased as a result of working remotely. On the other hand, there's evidence that some people were working more hours. We can move on. Again, the to disconnect came up in the context of people, 64% responding to email communication outside of working hours, and 26% of those chose to, 26% because of their workload. And yeah, you can see that when the slides are shared. Then there's some interesting data which we have to drill further into relocation patterns, and some people have moved as a result of the pandemic. And the regions they have moved to, the top 3 regions were the West, the Southwest, and the Midwest, of those who had moved already. Again, we hope to publish more data on this in due course. Thanks, Stephen. So this is the final slide, I think. Recap, basically, 94% want to work remotely some or all of the time post-crisis, and the breakdown is as listed there. I think we'll leave it at that. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Deirdre and Stephen. I'm sorry for rushing.
You're okay, thanks.
There's a huge amount of information. I think it's really useful to have that information and to be able to maybe to follow back on it afterwards. Just to move on now, and you're going to have to forgive my Finnish pronunciation, but move on to Sami Tankamaraki. And Sami is a coordinator with a Finnish network of smart villages, which is operated by the Rural Development Programme. And Sami is a researcher and developer in many rural development themes, so has quite a bit of experience. So we'd like to welcome Sami to the presentation. You're muted there, Sami.
Okay, no, now I got the connection. I lost myself. I'm sorry. Sorry, let's try again. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Sami.
For the introduction and for the possibility to be here and say something shortly about the situation in Finland under the headline given to me. And maybe now I try to share my slides again, or can you see it already?
We can see it, Sami.
Okay, then it's okay, but I can't for some reason. Okay, maybe now. So you can see the slides and
yeah.
Okay. Yes, I have long experience in the field of rural development policy and research, and I have also had a couple of remote working projects to lead on since 10 years ago. So I somehow know something about the topic, but I have 5 questions, 5 slides, and hopefully some answers. But let's start it because time is limited. So what we already know about the progress of the remote work in Finland. First of all, big thanks to previous presenters because you gave so much good examples and good and help a lot to continue. So I'm quite sure that it's easy to say that remote working is kind of eternal potential because of its long history, countless comebacks, new names, etc., bad timings. But there has been a lot of talk, not so much results. And the situation has been very much the same in rural development. Remote working has been kind of mandatory praising programs, strategies, etc. But again, the results have been quite poor, at least in Finland. So the remote working is a good example of how long the transformation of work can last. And in the case of Finland, almost 40 years if we start counting from the 1980s when the first experiments and then telecottages were launched in the countryside. But now, as we have heard, and then you very well know, remote work and co-working spaces are in the headlines in many ways with the possibilities and challenges. Here in Finland, and then the rural areas seem to benefit from the situation in many ways. They had the momentum now. And we have seen in Finland that after the spring, people have moved to summer houses to work. Interest in moving to countryside has increased. Moving to rural areas is something real that happened. It's not any social movement, but anyway, it's something that is real. So all in all, we can say that remote working it's quite interesting phenomenon. At the same time, it's old-fashioned, timeless, and trendy, as we have heard. So what we might not have noticed or fully realized is that even before the COVID-19, opportunities for remote working and co-working places have been identified in rural areas. And many things has happened already, like we have heard in previous presentations. And I have put some examples from the States and Canada, where have been a lot of project attractors, initiatives, supports, etc. in the cities and rural municipalities. And the interest in co-working spaces outside the big cities was already a rising trend, at least according to sites where they have listed 5 trends already in January in this year. And this is something that can be seen also in Finland, because during the last years, more and more workplaces have been established in rural areas. Like you can see there is a map. It's not a complete map, but nice picture anyway. And I put some examples. Red ones are urban and green ones are rural. And small towns in particular have adapted digitalization, remote working and co-working places as a new keys to vitality, to revitalize themselves, regenerate themselves, to tackle all this negative type of development spiral, and have those as a tools for smart shrinking, which is very popular concept at the moment, at least here in Finland, I guess all over Europe. So what we know that like Tracy said, that we have remote working here, but we also live in a digital society, and the transformation of work and technology has long been possible in rural areas, but this is something that has not been desired or fully realized. No, even though also in rural areas, work skills, know-how, expertise, and new job opportunities have long been much more than traditional rural work. But those municipalities who has realized this, they are interested and done something. in this field. And then here is some a few factors mentioned by the municipalities themselves. Okay, someone have had the idea, but they have noticed that okay, we have had suitable premises available, plenty of commuters in the residents, and a lot of temporary residents, cottages, summertime dwellers, etc. And this potential it's quite huge in Finland. We have over 500,000 summer cottages here, and because of the situation, temporary residents have asked about the remote working spaces from the municipalities, and this has again increased development, marketing, and new startups, and new users. You can name it by yourselves, but interesting point is that in those premises in the municipalities, entrepreneurs are not so much involved yet. Okay, they have their own locales, but co-working places are places to network, and for the micro companies, micro entrepreneurs, networks are very important, and that's why there is a huge hope for to get those involved too. And of course, development projects are needed at least at the beginning. Now, how the investments made by the municipalities have supported vitality so far? What is the vision in the municipalities? Now, first, those lesser time residents, they have spent more time in municipalities, longer weekends, longer holidays, etc. But the hope is to get new residents as well per month. And the image branding, it's quite important. Like we heard that we have to make things visible, so the municipalities have to make them visible too, and that's why they have took the idea of create an image of the knowledge workers municipality, or to be more like smart cities, and have digitalization as a strategic goal or tool. And new service packages concepts are developed already, but there have to be innovative still. And this combination of work and vacations, like you can see in the picture, is one good example of the latest trends that we can see also in Finland. And it could be something to create or catch up. All in all, now it's the time, maybe the last one, to take full advantage of remote working as an opportunity for rural vitality. We have the momentum, and to make it a holding factor, because we know already that rural areas are attractive, but the challenge is that how to get people to stay, not just to visit. And that's why I have this lower picture, that maybe the combination of remote working and a good life is something for the rural municipalities to offer and to develop and produce and have a new key to success via that. And what is still needed for support? It was so interesting and good to hear about the Stefan's presentation. PC Hub network. That is exactly what we need in Finland. We need national network of co-working spaces. Okay, we have started this discussion, and we will have our first steps on December already. But now we heard good examples of what to do and what to achieve here. And this visibility that Tracy mentioned is very important. Remote working possibilities must be clear. You can't find anything on the website if the information is missing. So the teleworking, remote working services could be there on the website as one of the municipal services or so. New ways of recruiting remotely, place independently, or like Mikko said, that there's no location at all mentioned in the announcement. So that's the way that what we need. We have to change this culture. and of course research, monitoring, evaluation, a lot of open questions. We don't know anything about the balance between the old and new normal after the COVID-19 when it will end, and hopefully it will end someday. And what is the future of the work of the future, etc. New skills, and how the geography of work and working will change. Many open questions.
Sami,
And
you have 1 minute left.
Yeah. It's exact enough. And in the long run, if we want to promote the team and have a target, something sustainable, we need strategic approach, we need funding resources, and we need rural policy support, like Lorraine mentioned already at the very beginning. And maybe this is something that we'll get answers from the next speakers after me. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Sami. And just looking at some of the questions, just picking up some of the items there, I think it's very interesting to hear the similarities of the conversations in Finland and Ireland, and perhaps looking at maybe Ireland is a step ahead in terms of what the Atlantic Economic Corridor is doing. And that's something that Finland might be looking at in terms of the national network. It's a regional basis at the moment, I suppose, in Ireland. And from Stephen's presentation, we're hoping that will be nationally rolled out and will support the rest of the country. And I think that's picking up on one of the questions in the chat in relation to the support for the Atlantic Economic Corridor officers in the region. And will there be a support similar to that in the rest of the counties across the country? And I know, Stephen, you don't have an answer to that yet, I suppose, but I suppose the research is the first stage, and that might come next year.
Yeah, there's a couple of different supports, and St. John O'Connor from the DRCD is on the call as well, and he chipped in there with there is broadband officers in all the local authorities, and some of them are focused on hubs as well. But they're probably up to their necks at the moment now with the BCP network, which I touched on in my presentation, which is the result of the National Broadband Plan.
Yeah, and I think that's supporting the rollout of the hubs, I suppose, at community level. I know we will be involved in them as well, that the hubs at the community level are coming through the BCPs, and I think that's...
You're on mute, Lorraine.
Lorraine, you're on mute.
Sorry, Christine, thank you. I have a puppy here at my feet whining, so and I know I see Stephen that you provided the book hub as described, but the hubs now will be taking bookings anyway. But I suppose what your procurement is going to allow is that the rest of us will be able to kind of piggyback on that in the future as well, which will be really important.
Yeah, exactly. So how that's supported, I don't know about. That's what I was referring to Andrew's question there going forward. But it's as I said, it's a pilot for the AEC, so we get it up and running there, and then future contracts. Then we can figure out how that's rolled out across the country. But the data gathering has started, which is the initial phase. It's not to be underestimated, just to find out what's out there, because there's lots of these facilities operating around the country, and maybe there's not that much known about them.
Yeah, and I think the study recently by the regional assemblies has been very informative of what hubs are in the country, and I suppose the potential in the private sector for people to work in those hubs. So that will help in future investment. People will be interested. At least they know where there is a demand. Will kind of inform us a little bit on it. So if there's no more questions on that, I might hand back over to you.
Can I just chip in there, Lorraine?
Yeah, sorry, Deirdre. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a question in the chat about any evidence from our surveys on the interest in working in hubs. And again, I suppose it's picking up on a theme that Tracy's mentioned, Stephen's just mentioned, which is, and the other speakers, which is about the visibility of hubs. So certainly there was a sense that, and there it's hidden in one of the slides when you go to circulate it. The actual interest in working from hubs was less than working from home. which in one way is understandable given that we're all working from home under COVID. But it does raise the question about the need for visibility, and obviously that's a lot of the work that Stephen is doing, but that idea of even at a local level, visibility of hubs and what they're there for will help enhance the client base and raise awareness.
Yeah, I think that's very true, Deirdre, of what they are and where they are. I think it's really important to get that message out there. And I think that's probably part of the conversation that you're having in the Western Development Commission about your marketing campaign, and the rest of us might be able to learn a little bit about into the future as well. I'll pass you over to Helly.
Yeah, yes. Thank you, Lorraine. And Sami, you can take your presentation off. It's still on
Oh,
the...
sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Okay, our next theme is about policy context. We know that here in rural areas we can and know how to do things, but we do need help from a national level and support from policy context. So there we have two speakers from Finland, Kristel Åström from the Rural Policy Committee, and Mr. Robert Troy is a State Minister for Trade and Promotion with Department of Enterprise. But we'll start with Kristel. Are you on the line?
I'm here. Hello to everyone. Do you hear my voice?
Yes, we do. So you can put your presentation on.
I opened the...
So Kristel is Secretary General in Rural Policy Committee in Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry in Finland.
Okay, thank you, Heli. Can you all see this now? I had some slow connections today, so I want to ensure that you see my presentation.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much to asking me to speak here in this very important and also very current issue of remote working. And I try to explain a little bit about what we have ongoing now on a national level and also in the rural policy perspective. If you look at the political goals for remote working and the current government program, you don't find a word there. It's not mentioned in the program right now, which is valid right now. But instead, we have this location, or we use this term or phrase like location independent work, and that you can find in this governmental program a few times. And it's considered to be a central tool when improving the competitiveness of government administration. And you can, if you want to think about the location independent work, it's actually maybe a broader definition like remote working, because it considers that you can work from wherever you want, actually. And that's maybe the term which is used in the governmental program. But of course, indirectly, there are many objectives in the government program that enables remote working when they are fulfilled. And for example, the carbon neutral society, the goal of it, and then also the construction of an extensive optical fiber network throughout Finland. I will come back to this later on. And we have an ongoing national program on multi-local and location independent government administration. It will be ready into next year, I think. And the COVID-19 pandemic, as many speakers before me has said, will change many things due to location independent work or remote working in Finland also. The rural policy in Finland, very shortly, we have a rural policy council, which is the core of the rural policy system. The government sets the tasks, the members, and term of office to money. We call it money. And the next term will be in 21 to 25. So we are now in the end of this term. And it's currently hosted within the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry. And there is also my working place. And the Minister of Agriculture and Forestry, Jari Leppä, is the chair. And then again, the Minister of Economic, Mika Lintilä, is the vice chair. But what I think is very important is that this council includes representatives of different ministries, regional government, research and development organizations, as well as organizations and associations. So it's a very cross-sectoral body or council. And due to this, we have to assist the government in cross-sectoral and strategically important rural policy issues, and we also lead the work and create guidelines for the national policy. And furthermore, we have also a parliamentary working group on sparsely populated areas, which is started now, and it will continue to 2023. And when we are talking about sparsely populated areas in Finland, it covers 68% of the land area. So it's actually quite a large area of Finland. And the vision is, of course, that the rural areas form an inseparable part of the national prosperity and society. And the aim of rural policy is to ensure that the aspects from rural areas are included and taken into consideration in decision making on all levels. And if you look at the multilocality, I will be very short here because Sami took up this aspect. We have always been quite multilocal in Finland. And actually, when you look at the map, I'm very sorry, it's in Finnish, but the red areas shows the biggest change in population number between winter and summer. And it's, of course, the main reason is that we have over 600,000 holiday homes. And in 65 municipalities, we have more holiday homes than permanent dwellings. So in summertime, it changes where people live. And people are also commonly working and living in different places. And the COVID-19 pandemic has made the multilocality visible for a broader audience. Now the media has been very much talking about this, and people, when actually in one night many of us had to start working remotely. Many people moved to their holiday homes and have been spending there half a year almost, because they're quite well equipped and you can live there also in many of these in wintertime. And the big question is, of course, how can rural policy benefit from this when moving to the new normal, because we will not get back, we will get further. But the rural policy goal is to enable and strengthen the possibilities for remote working, and what tools do we need on a national level and also on a regional and local level. I think one of the most important things is, of course, a fast and reliable network connection. And again, sorry for the map, but you can see the percentages here. It's about how much do we have optical fiber or broadband in different regions today. And you can see that there are regions that have over 70% will be the biggest, I think, but we have regions where there is only 21% of the optical fiber. So we have much to do. And one of the most important measures when looking at the vitality of rural area, a comprehensive, fast and reliable network in the entire country. And these telecommunication networks also plays an important role when targeting for a just transition into a carbon neutral society. And of course, also the more traditional infrastructure like condition of roads and working public transport plays an important role in enhancing possibilities for remote work. But I think the network connection is one of the most important things. Then of course you have to have service. It's an essential aim for the rural policy. And I think you have the same in Ireland, that the ongoing trend is that the service is proceeding to urban areas. And many services are also being digitized. Important also to develop user-friendly service and to learn people to use digital services. We think this is a very important issue. And a comprehensive service network in rural areas is, however, an essential basis for vital rural areas. And you need to take a place-based policy approach. It's essential. The service can be produced in different ways in distinct rural areas. Multi-service centers combining public and private services are needed. We have these examples. We need more opportunities to make these. And the third sector role in producing services in rural areas will grow in the future, we believe, and the collaboration between public, private, and third sector has to be improved. And the social environment cannot be underestimated when people decide where they want to live and work. It's essential that organizations, associations in rural areas are supported financially and politically to improve their operational environment. It's very important that you feel yourself welcome when you want to move to an area. We also had a questionnaire a few weeks ago where over almost 1,000 people answered, and the most important thing when thinking of moving to the rural areas is of course the work. But then social and healthcare services were quite considered to be very important, and then also the social environment came up, and infrastructure, of course. We have a very strict or I would say good objective, which is to turn Finland into the world's first carbon neutral welfare society by 2035. And in this, when reaching the goal, the rural areas plays an important role in this transition. And when developing location independent, or if you want to call it remote work, it's essential that we look at both challenges and possibilities and make policy decisions that are sustainable. This, I think, is very important because the critic which is coming against us is also usually that it's not very sustainable. People are moving back and front and moving on many areas, but then we also have to say that if we have good connections, you don't need to drive your car every day to the work, and that's also a benefit for the environment. And more extensive implementation of multi-location and location-independent work or remote work, it requires this decision-making, common ground rules, and support for leadership. So these are the things we are right now discussing and planning how to get to the goals. And we have also a program which we are working on right now, and it will be from 2021 to 2027. And in this rural policy program, we will have many of these objectives written. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. And then we have Minister Robert Troy from Ireland, from the Minister of State with responsibility for trade promotion within the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment. And Robert is also a local member of Parliament from the Longford and Westmeath counties. So please welcome to the line, Robert.
Good morning, and good morning to all your participants who are tuned in this morning. I hope you can all hear me okay.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, I'm delighted to have been asked to speak at this Rural Working Hubs webinar. Unfortunately, we can't meet in person, but hopefully with the advances in the vaccines that gatherings such as this, in physical gatherings such as this, are not too far away. I suppose it's in the context of COVID that has accelerated the discussions in terms of remote working and working from home. And I think remote working is an area that has potential to have significant impact on both the economy and indeed on the lives of people in Ireland. The benefits are broad and they're far-reaching. Balanced regional development, increased participation of the labour force, attracting and retaining talent, alleviating the accommodation pressures, particularly in our large urban areas in cities like Dublin and Cork, and improving work-life balances, reducing commuting times, enabling people to spend more time with their family, and from an environmental perspective, also reducing carbon emissions. So there are many benefits from remote working. Last December, my department published the Remote Work in Ireland report, which detailed the prevalence and the types of remote working arrangements in Ireland. The report highlighted ways in which remote working could bring about positive changes in our society. And while it identified remote working as an upward trend, when it was published, it never envisaged COVID-19 and how that trend would be accelerated. And I suppose as we continue to navigate through COVID-19, many of us have experienced working remotely for the first time, and often, this has been in less than ideal circumstances, because there is quite a difference in working remotely and working from home. Working from home, you're sometimes involuntary doing it, having to in cramped spaces, utilizing your own living area, maybe sharing houses with somebody else, far from ideal. But then on the contrast, you have remote working centres, which is facilitating working in the rural communities and the towns and the villages throughout Ireland. And despite the challenges that people have faced over the last 8 or 9 months, a recent study from Whitaker Institute and the Western Development Commission, and I think it was alluded to in a previous slide, found that 94% of people would like to continue working from home or remote working in the future. And as a consequence of that, government wants to take the necessary steps to encourage and support working from home, both in the short term and in the long term, and conscious that it's not one or the other, that some people will opt for a hybrid, where they'll work in their own locations part-time and work remotely for the remaining of the time. An initial response to working from remote working during COVID-19, my department published guidance earlier this year. The guidance included, health and safety, employment conditions, data protection, cybersecurity, equality, and training. And to build on that guidance, in July of this year, my department published a public consultation to seek feedback from the key stakeholders in relation to how that guidance could be improved. And we significant enough feedback. We got over 500 submissions from a range of people, from the unions, from employers, representative bodies, special interest groups. And the majority of the submissions were all talking about the positivity of remote working. And again, highlighting how remote working had such a positive impact on people's lives, allowing them to spend less time in the car, less time commuting, and more time at home with their families. And it also, a lot of the submissions alluded to, and what we're talking about this morning, is how remote working could help breathe life back into the towns and villages across the country that have suffered decline over the last decade or so, because people want to be able to work in the areas that they grew up in and in the areas that they're settled down in. And I suppose an example of that is the application made by Longford County Council, which my department was happy to approve recently, is in relation to the remote working hub in the town of Edgeworthstown, small town in County Longford, which will facilitate in the region of 40 people to work remotely and have the benefit of all the infrastructure that's needed to ensure that they're working, that they can work satisfactorily remotely. And to bring about further positive change, my department is leading on the development of a national remote work strategy. And this strategy will build on the findings of Remote Work in Ireland report and will draw on the results of the public consultations on remote working that I referred to already. The strategy is hoped to be published in December of this year. as I said already, remote working to me has huge potential, and it has the opportunity to drive balanced regional growth through a coherent policy to enterprise needs of every part of Ireland. And that's stated within the recent programme for government. We've a new government in Ireland in the last 6 months, and certainly it was a very much a firm commitment of our party that we must see a greater emphasis on balanced regional development. As part of that, in budget 2021, €5 million has been allocated to the Department of Rural and Community Development to further develop a national network of remote working hubs and to upgrade existing facilities. An interdepartmental working group has been established to progress this project, and a senior official from my department is a member for that group. Enterprise centres, incubator hubs and shared office space are key enablers of balanced regional enterprise. And under the Community Enterprise Centre scheme, the Community Enterprise Innovation Scheme, the Regional Enterprise Development Fund and the Border Regional Enterprise Fund, Enterprise Ireland has invested 180 million in these infrastructures. These facilities provide physical workspace for businesses across the country to deliver training and soft supports to their tenants and also other companies in their locality and regional area, and also offer core working facilities. So this is something that we have been building on over the last number of years, and is certainly something that we're accelerating our efforts on as well. To build on the capacity, the enterprise centres, incubator hubs and shared office space, we're going to offer more remote working facilities. And a central objective of Enterprise Ireland's regional strategy called Powering the Regions is in the Work Smart Challenge. And the challenge aims to support 10,000 co-working and incubation spaces regionally. And as part of this, the agency has a target of 600 co-working spaces for this region that we're speaking in this morning. The ecosystem of hubs and other facilities throughout the country offer hot desk facilities, which are significant to support both remote workers and students at the present time. These facilities cover the spectrum from fully commercially operated business models to public sector and enterprise hubs. The Western Development Commission has mapped over 100 remote working hubs within the Atlantic Economic Corridor region alone. And this area is covering from County Kerry right up to County Donegal. And the objective here is to develop these hubs in a cohesive network of facilities in this corridor.
Sorry, 1 minute there.
Just coming to the end now. In addition to these facilities along this corridor, there's also 300 broadband connection points will be connected in remote rural areas across the country over the coming months to provide public access to free high-speed broadband services, because again, it was something that was alluded to earlier on. Unfortunately, we do have black spots, and enable to people work remotely, we need to put in the necessary infrastructure. IDA, our national body, is finalising their 2021-2023 strategy, and a significant emphasis on that strategy is on regional development. So I suppose just to finish up and surmise and say that, as a government, we are totally committed to putting in place the necessary infrastructure to support remote working. We feel it is the right thing to do from balanced regional development. It's the right thing to do to ensure that our workers have a better quality of life. It's the right thing to do from the perspective of the environment, and from engaging with business representative groups like IBEC, like ISME. It is actually also the right thing to do from employers, because what they have found during the period of COVID-19, despite the many challenges that people face working from home, they have found that people are actually more productive when they don't have to embark on that commute on a daily basis. So it's good for the person, it's good for the region, and it's good for the employer. It makes sense. It's something this government is committed to doing. The opportunity to contribute to your webinar this morning.
You're on mute, Helly. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. And now if participants have a question, so please write them on the chat box so we can pick up them there.
I think it's great to see so much support from the national government towards rural working hubs and the role that they will play in rural regeneration. I think that's very important. We have been working, I suppose, at the county levels to try and develop them and promote them, to see now that we will have the support from a national level in terms of funding. It's really going to help roll out the regeneration of our towns and villages and support that work. So it's really great that is there, and hopefully that, I suppose, that we can avail of the opportunities that it does provide.
Well, I think, to be fair to Longford County Council, they have never been slow in making application to any national funding across a spectrum of departments. So, and I don't expect you to be slow going forward either. But as I mentioned, one of the very good projects for this region is the Edgertown hub, and that is a combination of community effort, the local authority, and national government coming together. And hopefully that project will inspire other community groups to make similar applications.
Yeah, and I find it very interesting that the support for remote working in Irish policy level, it's very concrete, when in Finland the speech more on a theoretical level, that yes, it is a good thing that, but still they don't see it so clearly that they want to support remote working. And on a national administration level, they have only spoken about remote working only in few administrations in very concrete ways. Of course, nowadays everybody is working remotely, but making a future scenarios and strategies, so only a couple of departments have done so.
And I see there is a question there, Robert. I'm not sure if you can answer. When will high-speed broadband be available in all rural towns?
Well, look, at that is a commitment in the programme for government to accelerate the rollout of high-speed broadband under the National Broadband Plan. As you know, there is pockets that have yet to be able to avail of that. It is our intention to accelerate it, but acknowledging that it is going to take probably between 18 and 24 months before it's completed, that we have developed those broadband points, which I alluded to in my speech, to facilitate people who don't have it at direct to their home, that they can come into the likes of Aberthrule, or indeed where I am this morning in Banlacarrigy, and have access to broadband to facilitate remote working.
Thanks very much, Robert. I think we might just, and conscious of the time, we're getting close to 12 o'clock. We have 2 speakers left. We might just move on to the next theme, which looks at the community element and the community implementation of the remote working hubs and the role they play. And our communities are very proactive, a very important role in the development of these rural working hubs. And in terms of the rural regeneration, it's really the communities that are at the heart of this, and it's the communities that are going to build on it. And I think we've heard that from the likes of Tracy already. It is a community project, and it's building from the ground up. And just looking at the speakers we have, we thought it was an opportunity to get their perspective and identify learnings that they might have from their work that others might learn from as they seek to develop remote working hubs. So first off, we have Maija Hyronen from a co-working hub in Finland, and she's just going to give us a little bit of an insight. She's a project manager in a project that works together with co-working hubs in central Finland, and she will give us some insight into her work. Maija, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Nice
Hi,
to
Maya.
be here. Is me show? Do you see it?
Yes, we do.
Good. First, I want to ask everybody, do you want a hub? If you want, raise your hand up. Yes, good. We have project in Finland in Pihtipudas, Wanna Hub. And main goals, this is building a network of local co-working spaces. And now it's done. Our hub is now 3 months old. And we have very, very much workers here. We offer different sorts of training and education. We offer meeting space for companies, enterprise, and for others partners. And we provide training for other hub project manager and residents of the area. This is free during the project. I don't know what we do when project is over, but we are working at on every day almost. We want to generate more vitality to Pihtipudas. One project can maybe help us. I don't know, it's enough, but we hope that this kind of network offer different types of co-working spaces, which all have their own emphasis. In addition, the project can promote higher education in our area and lower the participant threshold. And we have good partner of this project, Jyväskylä Open University. These pictures are from our hub, and there's many small workplaces, and it's 2 or 3 bigger where you can go and take meetings or some kind of that. Kickstart. The project aims to kickstart the cooperation networks activities so that at the end of the project, the network includes hubs across the regions. I hope that's. In addition, the aim is to ensure lifelong learning and get active education cooperation running in several hubs. Welcome. You are welcome to put us in our great co-working place, as we call Hubteki. If you want to ask something, please get in touch. This is my name, and you find us Facebook and Instagram. We don't have yet a website, but this is our local website. Our own Hubteki website is already doing yet, but not ready yet. We do this because we love Pihtipudas. This is one of picture of here. How time is now.
Very good, Maya. You kept well in the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
And I can see why you love it. That's a beautiful picture.
Thank you.
And our final speaker now, we're going to move on to Claire McEnroe from Edgeworthstown and Longford. So as Robert just mentioned, Edgeworthstown got funding under the Enterprise Ireland Fund for their hub, and Claire has been instrumental in bringing this project to the stage it is at the moment, and she's just going to outline a little bit of kind of, I suppose, how they've got to the stage and where they are in the process. And she's also involved in established the Grow Remote Longford chapter, so working kind of with Tracy and developing the community around remote working in Edgeworthstown and in the wider Longford area. So Claire.
Okay, thanks, Lorraine. Can you see the presentation there?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so big hello to everybody, and I've also recognized a lot of names of people that have helped us along the way. So just in terms of how we started off with our building our business plan and putting it together, initially, or we are a community group, a newly formed community group. So part of the work that we did was sort of creating a vision and creating our values for what we hoped our digital hub was going to provide. Our hub is just, I'll just stick on to it. So this is the picture of our hub at the moment, or an artist's impression of what it's going to be. It's currently the Ulster Bank building in Edgeworthstown, which has been vacant for a number of years. It's a historic building.
I think you haven't moved on the slides there. Sorry, you're still on the front page of it.
Oh, sorry. Has that moved on?
No.
Okay, I'll just come about that. How about that? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
That's it, yeah.
Okay, sorry. So this is just the bank at the moment. It's the former Ulster Bank building in Edgeworthstown, and it was vacant for the last couple of years. The council purchased the building and are leasing it to the community group in order to development as a digital hub with a community-based training centre to the rear. So just in terms of the collaborations or how we set out, these are just a listing of the number of people that we've collaborated with and talked with and have helped us along the way in terms of from Longford County Council, Local Enterprise Office, Enterprise Ireland have all been instrumental in terms of helping us achieve our funding. But we've also got help from all these other people along the way. So just in terms of this is what the vision and the business plan has put together. This is what our internal structure is going to look like. And also the training centre or the professional development centre, which is going to be to the rear of the site. So when we looked at the community needs in our area, we seen that there was a need to try and provide access to third education, in the town. And that was where our focus was going to be in terms of empowering our community through education and development. And there's different types of education. It's there's academic, but there's also well-being education and different other forms. So we're going to hopefully be able to provide that. Just in terms of who we're going to be able to accommodate, as Minister Troy said, we have accommodation for 40 people. We have decided to keep most of the building intact in terms of discrete office spaces, and we'll have meeting rooms, pods and networking areas included. They're just some of our services and their sort of requirements for digital hubs to be sustainable into the future. And then I suppose one of the areas or tips what forced us to be able to really cement our business plan, our vision, was gaining letters of support from all our stakeholders. And that forced us to be in a position to outline our plans in detail. And that, for us, that was really a good help. In terms of challenges that we've faced along the way, I suppose we just have, I'm sorry, the slide isn't coming up here for some reason. But just in terms of the challenges along the way were really, developing the business plan took some time, putting together funding applications and the preparation of funding applications, and also getting our head around public procurement, just to allow us to draw down the funds. So, in terms of going forward or the positivity, the network that we have met and the people we have met along the network have been invaluable in terms of helping us and getting us together. And, we will continue to use that network to help the people that are going to work within the hubs. And I think one of the best things that the hubs will be able to do is each hub will have a varied and diverse skill set within the hubs. So when the hubs are all connected through the network, people will have access to all of these skills, and it's going to be very positive, both regionally and nationally, I believe. So that's it, Lorraine.
Thanks very much, Claire. That's fantastic. And Claire and Maya, I think it's very important to hear from the community's perspective of how you found establishing the hubs, and I suppose the challenges, and we have to acknowledge there are challenges, particularly from a community point of view, in development of a hub, and where, you know, what I suppose what we hope to bring out of this project that we're involved in is develop a kind of a guidebook that will be able to identify them challenges and maybe give supports of way around them. And that's something that we hope to have available to everybody that's interested, all stakeholders, when we finish this project, you know, kind of around March next year. So ideas and comments like that are really, really useful for Claire and Maya. And if there's any questions, anybody has any questions?
I suppose, Lorraine, it's important to add there's a lot of positives as well. You know?
Yeah.
So, you know, all the people that we've met and the people that have helped us along the way, you know, that had we not been involved in the community project. So it's there's positives as well as challenges.
Yeah, and there's great support out there. I think everybody, we do recognise that, you know, the likes of Grow Remote here in Ireland, anyway, from our point of view, I think have been fantastic in joining the dots. As I said to Rose one day, that's really useful to have. We're all having conversations, but it's really to have somebody there that kind of can link us up together and join the conversations. So I think that's really, really useful. And we're coming to the end of it. And just before we do finish up, we have just another little question, if we can get into it on Menti. So I think maybe people have been looking at it already. Helly, you might be on mute. You're just showing us the results there.
Okay, so there's this 2 more Menti questions in the same link that we provided you earlier, and there you can see we had a question: is that what is the most effective tool to support remote working in rural areas? So rural developing programs and financial support are the most voted options, and here you could select only one option. And then there was this next question also: what makes remote working attractive for you? So there we can see that we all appreciated that our working place is close to home and good connections and good working mates and networks around it.
And thanks very much to everybody for participating in the surveys and just giving us an insight into the different things that are important in terms of remote working, and hopefully that'll help inform the discussion around remote working as we continue to develop both, you know, ourselves in Longford and Leader, but also nationally. I think the conversation that's ongoing is really, really useful. Really want to thank again all the speakers that have contributed today. It's been fantastic. I think it's a really good conversation. I think it's good to be able to share the information, not just here in Ireland, but to share and to learn with what's happening in Finland and see where we might be able to learn from them and create new opportunities here around our project. So just thank you again before we all go, and Helly, if you want to finish it up.
Yeah, thank you for your participants and our speakers, and we will send the material to you when we have uploaded the video to our net sites, so then you can share it and make the best use of it. And as far as for Finland, I can say that yes, we are going to look more deeply about these Irish examples about creating national network of remote working hubs. So this was at least very interesting webinar for me.
So thank you very much, guys. We'll follow up with the slides and the video, and thank you all.